you very much. A couple things as we start the program up. Just a reminder, our golf tournament, which was supposed to be held on May 6th, and it did rain in Middlesex County that day, which was a mistake for the rain. And as I say, the sun always shines in Middlesex County, but it will be June 3rd. That's a sold-out event. But just to remind people on that. And our annual awards night, which is the annual meeting of the Chamber, which is going to be held on Tuesday, June 7th, which we give our Distinguished Citizen Awards out, the Michael Green Award, and 3 scholarships. We have 3 of our distinguished citizens here this year with us. This is a huge award that the Chamber gives out. We had over 220 nominations this year. These are outstanding individuals that get it. Hold your applause, but I'd like to have all 3 stand up there with us here today. Darlene Briggs, Chandler Howard, and Larry Marino. And at our golf tournament, I think he's here, Pat Walsh will be getting the Bob Briggs Good Guy Award. He'll also be recognized at that. Immediately afterwards today, we have an energy forum. Thanks to Eversource, CNG, SCG, and Pullman Comley for their sponsorship of this. We have some terrific speakers. We have Jim Hunt with us, VP of Regulatory Affairs and Community Relations from Eversource, who will be heavily involved in this, along with Rodi Televi, Senior Director from UI also. So we appreciate that. This is going to be a very important workshop, and we have a great turnout, about 80 going to that workshop immediately afterwards today. Also, I'd like to just introduce the head table. Hold your applause to the end there. We're very fortunate to have Andy Aguanobi, the head of UConn Health, that has worked so close with Jackson Labs. As you know, this is a tremendous partnership, and we have some of our great people here from UConn. This partnership has done so much for the state of Connecticut. I know when Ed talks today, he'll be talking about all the exciting things that are going on, and I want to thank Andy, his team here, Carol, everyone else, for Mark especially, for everything that they've done to work with to work with Jackson Labs and Ed's team. Michael Hyde is here also down from Maine. I appreciate everything that he's done too. So let's have a round of applause for UConn Health. Okay, also we have with us Mayor Enzo Fienza from the town of Cromwell, Mayor Dan Drew from the city of Middletown. I'll tell you, there's not a better controller in our whole country than Kevin Lembo, and he travels all over Middlesex County. He's the best. Greg Shook from Essex Savings Bank. We have Jason Soucy, who'll be up in a second. Anna Wasessa, the outstanding president of Middlesex Community College, and Ann Evans from the Department of Commerce, who really is the unsung hero in the state of Connecticut for everything that she does for our manufacturers spread throughout the state of Connecticut, and getting them the ability to deal with companies overseas, and she's helping companies out in this state just deal with one another also. So, Ann, I want to publicly again thank you for everything. Also at our annual dinner, we'll be recognizing Vin Capice, and of course Greg Shook will be coming in as our new chairman. And Vin has done a wonderful job as our chairman of the chamber this year. It's a job that every month we have these breakfasts. We have business after works, we have divisions, we have 37 councils in our chamber, 2,200 members, and Vin has just been a terrific support, a great leader, and I'm very, very proud of him. Vin Capice.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here today. Thank you for coming on this Thursday before a long holiday weekend. I'm glad to see that the weather's finally changed a little. It seems like we were stuck in between spring and winter, and finally it looks like summer's arrived. We have some new members to announce, to recognize this morning, and I'd like to ask that you would hold your applause, and if you are here from any of these companies, I'd like, as I call your company's name, if you could stand up, and we will recognize everyone at the end. First up is the Connecticut Men's Health LLC from Cromwell. Anyone here from that company? Family Care Visiting Nurse, Stratford. Lantern Energy from Norwich. Ogilvy Technical Services, LLC from Higganum. Point Pickup Portland. Power Options Boston. Therapeutic and Spa Massage, LLC from Rocky Hill. And last but not least, Visual Technologies, Inc. from Hartford. If we could have a round of applause for all of our new members. We'd also now like to just congratulate and recognize Cooper Atkins Corporation, Carol Wallace, CEO, and her team. If you can just stand up and be recognized. At a recent McDonald's Worldwide Convention held in Orlando, Cooper Atkins was recognized by McDonald's as one of the Global Suppliers of the Year for 2015. And Cooper Atkins has the distinction of being one of McDonald's global suppliers, one of only two that have been serving McDonald's for the last 25 years. And so we want to congratulate them for the great work that they've been doing. And I want to personally recognize Carol. She sits on our board of directors and has done such a great job in helping the hospital. So not only is she doing great work at Cooper's Atkins, but she's also giving back to the community and serving on Middlesex Hospital's board of directors. And so we appreciate all the work that she's doing there as well. We also would like to recognize, we have three companies within Middlesex County that were recognized by the governor's, with the Governor's Tourism Awards. They were recipients of Governor's Tourism Awards. First up, for the 2016 Tourism Volunteer of the Year Award, I'm going to probably butcher your name here, but Jeffrey and Marianne Mothersbaugh from Naaman Brainerd Home B&B. Anyone? You're here. Okay, great. Let's recognize them. Congratulations. Secondly, we have the 2016 Tourism Leader of the Year Award, and that goes to Stephen Tagliatella. That's Italian, so I can say that one. Saybrook Point Inn, Marina and Spa. Congratulations. And last but not least, the 2016 Tourism Legacy Leader, John Lyman III from Lyman Orchards. John, are you here? Congratulations. Thanks. Have a good day.
Well, also, I just to follow up to John, just to remind everyone that the 275th anniversary of the Lyman Farm, which is unbelievable that a business has been in business that long from one generation to the next. Just to put down, June 14th, which is Flag Day, will be the kickoff for a year-round celebration that the Lymans are going to do. We're really proud about that. I think it's the fifth longest, 12th longest family-run business in the country. Let's have a round of applause for that. Also with us today, we have a group from Connecticut Valley Hospital, and they hosted our mentor program annual picnic. This is an unbelievable event. As you know, our chamber is involved in so many other activities. We are heavily involved in drug and alcohol. You see at your place settings, we're going to be running a major opiate forum for those in the business community to address some of the problems that we have going right now. Also, our mentor program is a program that we deal with students in the Middletown School District that really needs somebody to look up to. And we have about 100 mentors, and we have 100 or so students. We have like 150 to 200 students that need help. So for next year, anybody could step forward would be greatly appreciated. But Helene, I want to thank you, your whole team. If they will please stand up from CVH for hosting this wonderful picnic we had. Thank you very much for your tremendous support. We really appreciate it. And I would be remiss on that if I didn't mention Liberty Bank. Liberty Bank had their staff there serving everyone at that event, but more importantly, Liberty was the founder of this mentor program 20 years ago. And we really appreciate that we're dealing with youngsters that need that support and need that help. We have a big event coming up. Attaboy, Chandler. Way to go. We have a big event coming up in a couple of months. Jason Soucy is up from the Travelers.
Thank you, Larry. For those of us who do business here in Middlesex County and the state of Connecticut, it really is wonderful to see emerging companies like Jackson Laboratories settling here in the state of Connecticut, growing companies like Cooper Atkins doing business the way they're doing here in the state. And having Dr. Lou here today really reminds me of what is at the core of the tournament's ability to generate over $1.56 million for charity. And as our mission to grow charity dollars is so important and integral to that, we would not be able to do it if we didn't provide an incubator for business that's been as successful as it has been, especially since Travelers took over as the title sponsor in 2007. So it's great for me to see folks doing well and growing in business, because every day of the tournament, that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to have a who's who of business owners here in the state of Connecticut at the event, enjoying the event, but most importantly, also making wonderful connections for business, and hopefully being a little bit provincial about it and such, and doing business here with those in the state. So it's just it's a great reminder for me today to have them here, and hopefully we can have that same element and accomplish that in the month of August, coming up just shortly 65 days away at the Travelers Championship, August 1st through 7th. For those of you who haven't participated, we've got wonderful hospitality available for businesses of all sizes. We've got volunteer opportunities again that'll help us generate more money for charity. My team will be over at the table when we're done, but again, I think today's a great day just to celebrate business here in the state. Dr. Lou, we've got a little package of Travelers Championship stuff for you as well. Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
I'm just going to do a couple of quick follow-ups, one of which Carol Wallace and Cooper. And Vin, you did a great job talking about them. But I would really be remiss if I didn't just remember her dad. That really, Floyd Wallace, who really was one of the individuals back when I first took over the chamber back in 1983, when this chamber at that point had 260 members. We're now over 2,200. And Floyd, along with Jack Lyman and others, were one of the few people that stepped up and said, okay, we want to make a difference and work. And he's looking down now on this award that you guys received, and I know, and your mom too, who's also a very, very special person. And I just want to congratulate you for everything that you've done. You've been unbelievable. If you want to go into a manufacturer and you want to see people happy where they're working, and you want to see productivity, and you can eat off the floor in there, then you go to Cooper. And then you take that and you just say, I'm going to do the same thing with my company. So Carol, I'm just so proud of you for keeping a tradition going that your dad started, which the same thing with Lyman's, which makes Middlesex County really a different place in the state of Connecticut. And Jeff, Steve, and John, I want to congratulate the three of you, and thank the three of you also for your unbelievable commitment to tourism. Tourism is a huge economic generator in Middlesex County and the state of Connecticut, and sometimes we fail to recognize that. And we have these individuals that step up. I think there were 6 awards given, and 3 of them are from Middlesex County, which speaks volume of what's going on. So thank you, the 3 of you, for your wonderful leadership. And the other night I was at a function that Billy Corvo talked at about his dad, Max Corvo, who was in the OSS during the Second World War. And he was the individual that led all of the effort behind the lines in Italy and Sicily during the Second World War, working for Wild Bill Donovan, the head of the Secret Service at that point. His dad was number 46 out of the 2,400 employees. And that whole group of Middletown patriots that were put behind enemy lines to open the way for our troops as they went through Italy was a story that I could not believe. Billy, just stand up for a second. This is another example in Middlesex County of an individual, because of his love and his dedication to his dad. That message is out there now that these veterans of the Second World War that saved basically our country because they were put over behind enemy lines. And that story is unbelievable. Billy, I'm proud of you. Great job. I get fired up about Middlesex County and all of you here. And I'm fired up about Ed Lou, too, and John Patrick. Ed, I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank you for your foresight, for reaching out to look at the state of Connecticut, and for the state of Connecticut reaching out to you. Not only UConn, but Catherine Smith and Governor Malloy and his team to have you come to the state of Connecticut. I know you've got some exciting things to say, but we are very, very proud of you. We're very proud of your team, both up in Maine and here. And it's going to speak volumes of what the state of Connecticut is going to look like in 20 years, because that is when all of this will be coming forward. The excitement of UConn Health, Jackson Labs, Yale University, Wesleyan, all working together to create a better lifestyle for all of the citizens in our country. And Jackson Labs is so fortunate to have a leader like Ed Lou. Also, Farmington Bank, under the leadership of John Patrick, has been unbelievable. I've known John for many years. I know that he's very proud that just recently he was inducted into the Business Hall of Fame for junior achievement, which is a huge honor. John went to East Catholic, and that crosses back over into my coaching career when I taught at Xavier. Now, we always beat East Catholic in football, but they beat us in everything else. But John, I want to thank you for being a role model for the business community, for stepping up and having people like Paul LaMonica that works with our chamber on an ongoing situation give them themselves because of your leadership and your dedication to the state of Connecticut. You're going to make, and you have made, a difference for all of us in Connecticut. And it gives me a tremendous honor to introduce John Patrick.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate those remarks. When I was in high school, I was 6'2", and then I played Xavier, and I got shrunk down because Larry's team used to kick the you-know-what out of us. I don't know how many undefeated seasons you have, but I always remember that that bus ride going to Palmer Field, and it wasn't very fun. But anyway, it's an honor for me to be here today, and it's an honor for me to, and for our company to be affiliated with the Middlesex Chamber. Likewise, Larry's done a great job as executive director of the Chamber in growing things. And at Farmington Bank, one of the things that we talk about is that we want to make sure that we're relevant as an organization, that we're relevant as a bank. And if you trace the roots of banking back to its origins, you realize that banks are here to serve the community. And our bank bank has been around since 1851, that longevity, that history that's been in the state of Connecticut and in central Connecticut. But we have a great foundation, and we can't do business the way that we did business in 1851. We have to be able to look and modernize and be able to grow. And I think chambers are indicative of the growth and the spirit of growth within the United States, but more importantly, within Connecticut. As we all know, we face some challenging economic times, both nationally and locally. But when you have challenges, we have to work harder, and we have to have optimism, and we have to move forward. And so at Farmington Bank over the last several years, we looked and we said we want to be relevant in our marketplace. We want to be relevant in changing and dynamic community. And for that, we want to make sure that we're economic drivers in the markets we serve. And so to prove that we're economic drivers, we had to set forth a growth pattern over the last several years. And so since 2008, we went from $900 million in assets to close to $2.8 billion in assets today. From 12 branch locations centered in Farmington, Connecticut, to over 24 locations today, with loan offices in Fairfield and in Branford and in Western Massachusetts on top of that. And we're proud that within the next 30 days we'll be opening another branch office for ourselves in Vernon, Connecticut, throughout our expansion. But during that time, not only did we expand our asset base, which is taking in deposits from our customers and providing capital to businesses and individuals that need to be able to grow in fulfilling those economic challenges and the mission we have to be an economic driver, but we also added jobs at our own company. In 2008, we had 134 employees. Today, we have over 344 employees. Those are new jobs that were created by our company during that time. And so not only do we talk about being an economic driver, but we put our money where our mouth is to make sure that we're investing in our own company, investing in the communities we serve, working with chambers and nonprofits. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that there are people and our people within our organization work tirelessly with organizations like the Chamber and a variety of other non-for-profit organizations. And Larry, you mentioned junior achievement. Next week we go into an inner city school in East Hartford. We have about 30 employees working with UTC to spend a day and a half there to talk about literacy and teaching kids and a variety of other things in those mentorship programs that are very, very, very important today to help drive our youth. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate your kind words. I appreciate the reception that we have from the Chamber and our customers in Middlesex County as we continue to grow and throughout Middlesex County, the state of Connecticut. And so while we have these challenges, we really need to work together. It's hard work, but we will be successful, especially if we all work together for the same mission, to grow and prosper and have a great economic base here in Connecticut and the state of Connecticut. So again, thank you all for being here today, and thank you. It's an honor to be a sponsor for this meeting today, Larry. Thank you.
Well, I talked a little bit about Ed before, but I just want to now call Ed Lieu, President and CEO of Jackson Laboratories. As you know, this has been one of the big economic directions that the Governor Malloy administration has moved forward with. As I said before, the work that they've done with both the University of Connecticut health system and also Yale University to create really exciting areas in genomics. I know that Ed will be talking about the people that's coming to Connecticut and have come. But more importantly to me, as I said earlier about Ed, we are very fortunate because of his leadership, his dedication to excellence. His dedication to excellence. And that is what is going to make the major difference with Jackson Labs as they move forward to create a better, healthy country, world really, for all of its citizens. They are cutting edge, they're doing research that nobody else is doing, and they are making a difference today, but in 20 years from now, the difference will be longer lives for people, more productive lives for people, happier people, and be able to face some of the difficulties that we face with the ability to have success. And that's starting right now. It has been up in Maine but now it's in Farmington, Connecticut. I'm very proud of you, Ed. Thank you for being with us. Ed Lieu.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm wearing this hat because this is the only time I'm gonna ever look like Tiger Woods. Okay. So I'll take my hat off just to give my talk. It's really a great honor for me to be here. This is my third talk, I believe, and I really look forward to this every year. And I know one of these days you won't invite me, but and I'll probably be at home crying in my bed at that time. I want to thank Larry for all his hard work, not only with the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce, but his fantastic role in the state, and particularly with UConn. He was here at the very beginning of our discussions about coming to Connecticut, and I have to say that his enthusiasm was one of the reasons why we decided to come. I want to acknowledge also Andy Aguanobi and also Mark Lalonde in the audience, my two friends and colleagues at the UConn Health Center, for their persistence and for their really kindness in welcoming us and continued the partnerships that we've had all along. I want to start my talk about science and what we're doing and why it's going to be important for you. We live in a really, quite frankly, scientifically and medically, a really remarkable time. There's been no time in my lifetime that I've ever seen the pace of discovery that we're seeing today. What we're having right now is it's a true conceptual revolution about how we see biology and how it really will impact on medicine. Your genome is 3 billion letters of code, and in those 3 billion letters of code is all the information that describes who you are, to a great extent, your life expectancy, and also the potential for getting certain diseases. The most remarkable thing that we have right now is we can decipher every single letter of that code right now. We can read it, but can we understand it? This is really the role of the Jackson Laboratory, because we believe, and we've worked on this for 87 years, we're really masters of complex genetics and functional genomics. The complex genetics means that you have genes that determine certain traits, but there are 28,000 of them in your body, and each one of them contribute to every single trait. So in other words, it's not just one gene, one trait, but many genes working together in an analog fashion. And that's where the complexity comes in. I'll give you some examples that are happening here in Connecticut. Our doors opened in October of 2014, and we already have 205 individuals targeting 300. So we're way ahead of schedule. We have 18 right now faculty members who are drawn from all over the world, and we already have online about another 6 individuals coming. Several of our colleagues are joint faculty members with UConn, and these individuals are absolutely stunning, and I'll talk a little bit about their work. Just diabetes is really becoming a worldwide scourge. It's estimated that about, potentially in the next 20 years, 1 billion individuals will be diabetic. 1 billion plus individuals will be diabetic. And what happens with that, as you well know, is that body systems fall apart over time. Cardiovascular disease, blindness, kidney disorders. And if you really break it down to the cause of diabetes, of course, a lot of obesity will do that. But on a cellular basis, all of diabetes centers around 1 million cells in your body. And these are cells in your pancreas, little islets, and that's what they're called, islet cells, of your 37 trillion cells in your body. So if you think about it, it's almost 40 million to 1. And these cells are really, the failure of these cells is a culprit of the disease. Well, Michael Stitzel, who's a junior faculty member here, is devoted to figuring out why these cells fail. And in doing so, what he's using is some of the most refined genomic technologies of taking individual islet cells, breaking them down in individual cells, and then sequencing all the genes that are there, but also sequencing what we call the transcripts, where the genes, that is in your DNA, which is the blueprint, then converts to RNA, which are the messengers to the body, to the cells, that then converts into proteins. So insulin has a gene, it has an RNA, and then it converts to the insulin protein itself. But what he's found is that within that islets, these little islets, which are about 1,000 cells a piece, that they're actually not homogeneous, that there are actually around 5 different subtypes of those, one that cranks out the insulin, and the other that cranks out another hormone that balances the insulin, but the other 3 are unique and unusual. And in deciphering the signals from the genomic signals from these, he surmised that these are control cells within the islet itself, and many of them have controls in other hormones that are circulating in the body, and also in terms of inflammation. There are signals of inflammation in those islet cells. Now, what does that all mean? It says to us that with these signals, we now have a pathway to reverse the loss of those islet cells. Because the immune system is amenable to changes, and some of those hormones can be actually engineered in such a way that we can reverse that process. Now, what we do at the Jackson Labs is we understand the genome, but we also model the disease. We model them in many different ways. 3 major ones, which is modeling them on a computational level. So as you know, in weather prediction, which is actually nowadays pretty good, what happens is that the meteorologists actually take all sorts of data and puts it into a computer model that will tell you in a predictive manner what's going on in the future. That's precisely what we're doing with the big biological data that we're generating in the laboratory, is potentially to predict who would have the high likelihood of having disease, including cancers, including glaucoma, including diabetes, as we call it. But in order to do so, we have to put them in cellular models, and this is what Michael is doing. We're reconstructing the islet cell based on these stem cells that are generated from different portions of different cells in the body that gets reverted chemically and genetically into stem cells and then converted again to islet cells. This is work done with Mark Lalonde in the Stem Cell Regenerative Medicine Center that is actually supported by Connecticut as well. Then the last thing we do is actually model this in the organism, the mouse, which has been a centerpiece of the laboratory, of the Jackson Laboratory, to move it from a computational hypothesis into a cellular model, into an organism model, is the only way we can actually crack the genetic code, as it were, of disease. As we go forward, we have also scientists here working on the microbiome. We call it your second genome. Now, you yourself have a genome for those 37 trillion cells that you have, but you may know that we have 10 times more bacteria in your body than we have cells. And those bacteria you've had ever since you were born, and many of them you've acquired, but they're really stable in you. Now, George Weinstock and Julia O has spent a lot of time understanding that microbiome. And there are like tens of thousands of different species that are in your gut, in your skin, and in your mouth. Now, you may say that this is sort of the sewer of your body, but in actual fact, there's a dramatic and evolutionary relationship between the bacteria in your gut and your health. We now know that diabetic individuals have different gut flora. We know that people with irritable bowel disease, inflammatory bowel disease, have different gut flora. We know also that in the NICU, in the neonatal ICU, that the kids that are there, when they get infections, serious infections, most of the time it's from the gut that they have. So we are now very excited about how we are looking at the gut microflora, as we call it. Now, how do you look at 10,000 different bacterial species? You can't. You can't streak them out and pick individual bacteria out and characterize them. You have to sequence them, because each bacterium has its genetic code that is different from the other. And by these deep sequencing technologies that we have, and then computational reassembly, we have actually a signature picture of your gut flora. Now, George has done some very interesting things with the Children's Medical Center of Connecticut, where he's collecting diapers from the neonatal ICU. We have actually an entire bank of freezers with nothing but diapers. I'm sure the mothers here may cringe at the fact that you're throwing it away and we're saving it, you know. But it's really important. And what he's found by doing this is that many of these kids, when they get really seriously ill, when they get sepsis, the bacterium that actually emerged that causes the disease in these kids were originally first colonized in the gut, and then it emerges. So what this means is that we may have a tool to predict where these kids will get serious infections and maybe headed off at the pass. He's also looking at working with some of your gastroenterologists in a thing called fecal transplant. Yuck. You know. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking about it right after breakfast. But there is a very serious disorder called Clostridium difficile infection, where individuals who are taking antibiotics, they clear their gut flora of normal gut bacteria, and then an unusual one takes over. And this causes immense problems. And when I was in training, it was extremely difficult to eradicate. But it turns out that all one has to do is to reinstill the normal gut flora, the normal gut bacteria into that individual, and you get literally 100% cures. So what George is doing right now is really trying to understand which of the gut flora that is reinstated in the individuals that actually cures the disorder. Does it really require fecal transplant, or can we actually separate out those components? So it's what we call bugs to drugs, to actually convert a bug into drug. Now, why we're very excited about this is the whole probiotic movement is based on changes in your gut flora. We now have the tools to sense the gut bacteria, sense its fluctuations in health and in disease, and also sense the fluctuations once you receive probiotics. Now, instead of making probiotics a voodoo sport, as it were, we can actually put some science behind it, and we truly believe this is going to change the concepts of health. This is the type of health that you can actually maintain yourself. You can actually monitor it in your gut and potentially maintain a level of health that would avert some of the serious diseases you'll have. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about my own work in cancer. Very recently, we discovered, looking at the genomes of certain cancers, breast cancers, we found that there's a unique signature on a genomic scale. We could not have found this out using older technologies. In backtracking, in both historical data that we have accumulated and looking at new tumors, we found that these are many individual mutations that occur throughout the genome. Not one single gene is actually mutated, but many genes are together. Now, here again is this thing about being masters of complexity. This would be confusing to many individuals, but with the teams that we have at hand, we can deconvolute this into a whole genome signature. Well, what it turns out, because of the model systems that we've generated of these cancers, we find out that this form of breast cancer is very sensitive to certain agents. Agents that are normally not used in breast cancer, agents like cisplatin and docetaxel. And we have modeled this in mouse models of this kind of cancer and showed that we can cure these cancers with unique combinations of these drugs. Now, what we're talking about here is if you're a science fiction fan, it's the alternative experimental universe. Our goal is to construct, through these model systems, computational, cellular, and organismal, the alternative you in an experimental space, so that if I know you have diabetes and I know your genome, I could conceivably construct an alternative, your avatar, your surrogate in this experimental space, play around with multiple potential therapeutics, and there are many therapeutics. The issue is what's the best combination, and at the end reduce the 100,000 possibilities of those combinations into 5. And at that time, with those 5, we can test those rationally out with you. So this is going to be one of the most important things that we could provide in the medical context, and that is to in a personalized manner, provide for you an alternative experimental space so we can explore your personalized cure for a disease. Now, right now, the last example I'd like to give is an example for one of our joint appointees, Travis Hinson, who is a cardiologist from Massachusetts General Hospital, and he's a cardiac geneticist also, besides being a cardiologist. And what he's looking at is heart failure. One thing we've learned in genomics is that the genetics of disease is really front and center. We used to think so much is really environmental, and it still is very important, but is modulated by the fact that you are different from the person next to you, and you're different because your genes are actually different. There are different little variances in your genes. Now, does that mean that you're weak because you have X, Y, and Z? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that you have different susceptibilities and resistance to disorders. And what he found was that many individuals with cardiomyopathy, which is heart failure, actually have it because there is an inherent genetic abnormality in them. That comes out much more if there are other factors, coronary artery disease or otherwise. What he's done, however, is to take some of these induced pluripotent stem cells, engineered the mutations in these cells and convert them into muscle cells, and put them into micro cantilevers where the muscle bridges two sensors for tension and allow these muscles to twitch again. And by measuring the tension, he's now made correlations between the mutations that we discover, and we discover many, many mutations, and whether or not it affects cardiac twitch. Now, this is what we're calling the cellular model for heart failure, and you can imagine that we can now take a sequence and predict to a certain degree whether or not individuals have propensity for heart failure or not. And importantly, we can actually start looking at direct therapeutic cures for this disorder. Now, the Jackson Labs is a very unusual organization. We are a not-for-profit. We started in 1929, and I wanted to end this talk by giving you my view of economic development. We are here not just to publish papers. We're not here to win awards. We're here because we want to make an impact in human lives through our science. But very important, we want to have an impact in our communities. And if if a track record of any organization or any individual is a predictor of what we will do in the future, I'm very proud to say that, take a look at our track record. Since 1929, as a not-for-profit, the crash occurred in 29. For the next 10 years, our scientists grew vegetables in our little place in Maine to make ends meet. Over the years, we've had two major disasters: a fire that completely decimated the place in 47, and a second fire in 1989. In each case, we bootstrapped ourselves up to the current state that we have. We do not take handouts. We take promissory notes. We've had a few of them from the state of Maine, and we have one with you in the state of Connecticut. But if Maine, again, our experience in Maine is anything what we're going to be, what we promise you here, we're going to be good on our promise. Because from 1929, when there were 7 individuals, we now have 1,900 individuals in 3 different campuses, 1,300 in Maine. We're the largest employer in Hancock County. We're the 20th largest employer in the state of Maine. We pull in $500 million of traded resources back into the state of Maine. This is a not-for-profit that doesn't take handouts. Okay, this is the returns that we promise you. When we came to Connecticut, we thought that this was going to be a fantastic partnership because we bring to the table something that you may not have right now, but you bring to the table to us a tremendous opportunity. The opportunity to partner with UConn and partner with Children's Medical Center. The partnership allows us to move into translation, move into the clinics. It allows us to tap this remarkable wealth of intellectual power that is actually in this state. And I'm sure you're fully aware of that. It also allows us to engage in some of your industries, United Technologies and the others, which we've already begun some discussions, because biology is no longer isolated to just simple cells and animals. It is actually in interfacing in engineering, which we do quite a bit as well. And in this context, you have to give us a little time. After all, 1929 to what we have here. But every step of the way, we've actually put back into our community what we have also extracted, and we've done it in multiples as well. We believe that Connecticut. We believe in Connecticut. We believe that you have tremendous capabilities here. It's a matter of, just like what John Patrick said, we have to be optimistic when the chips are down. And in the Jackson Labs, the chips were down in 29, in 47, in 89. And we know that we can actually come back triumphant. So I want to thank you so very, very much. It's great to be here. And I'm sure you have a few questions about the science that I've just talked about. So thanks again.
Any questions?
Dr. Wu, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I really appreciated your presentation. I heard you, I think 3 years ago, we were talking about some of the research that you had done on breast cancer, and that you had determined that certain breast cancers were not, didn't respond to chemotherapy. And at that point, it was not helpful to give chemotherapy to certain breast cancer patients. Have you made any additional progress around that particular issue?
Well, yes, in the context of what I just told you, there's this subset that is exquisitely sensitive, and a subset, it's about maybe less than 10% of the population, of the breast cancer population, but unfortunately, they have the worst disease, the fastest relapse rate, and the earliest death. So by attacking that subset with this form of therapy, we think we can make headways. Now, having said that, the same form of therapies doesn't work with others. Okay. So this is the type of personalized medicine that we're talking about. But this is personalized by interrogating the whole genome as opposed to a biochemical test in the tumor itself. Oh, yes, please.
Doctor, you mentioned that there are a number of mutations that you discover on a regular basis. How much of that is attributable to toxins in the environment or the fact that we have diets that are heavily reliant on processed foods and refined sugars?
Right. Let me just say that there are two forms of mutations, okay? One that is in the cells of your skin, your blood, your tongue. This is what we call somatic mutations. They occur by accident and sometimes by exposure, as you talked about, cigarette smoking, radiation, sunlight. I'll get back to your thing about the toxins in a second. The second is a germline mutation, which means it's in the cells that become your sperm and your ova. And those are the gene mutations that get passed on to the next generation. The somatic mutations in your skin never get passed on. Okay. Now, we know for a fact that in terms of mutagenesis, the major mutagenic factors are, I just told you, cigarette smoking, sunlight, and irradiation. Toxins can do that, but toxins do also, there are some that are truly carcinogenic, that makes mutations, and then there are others that actually change the epigenome that renders those cells more likely to accept mutations. I would say that if you eliminate cigarette smoking, if you avoid excessive sunlight, and you avoid being irradiated, which I hope you do on a routine basis, the cancer rate, at least the cancer rate, will fall dramatically. And by the way, the demographics already tell us this. Amongst college-educated individuals, and I suspect many of you here are, the smoking rate is down to 4% from what used to be 60+%. In non-college educated, blue-collar families, the smoking rate is still relatively high. And what we're seeing is the cancer rate is quite different between the two populations. And just by stopping smoking, you will have conquered probably 40% of all cancers, not just lung cancer, but all other forms of cancers as well. Now, we do know that there are toxins that induce mutations. Those are heavily screened by the EPA and others. There's some serious rules and regulations about that. Not to say that we can't do better, but I think that on the whole, they've been relatively screened. What we don't know, however, are the non-mutagenic ones, the ones that change the hormonal configuration of your body. This is relatively new in the last 20 years, not acknowledged as a significant problem, and that's something that we need to work on. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a registered dietitian and I have a background in computational biology, and I'm interested in how the lab is thinking about working with translational aspects like diabetes, how the diet also the genetic impact could overall impact the manifestation of the disease.
Well, that's an excellent question. So when you talk about diet, you can't, quite frankly, do it purely computational. And you certainly can't change the media in a cell and think that you can model a disease. So we've done a lot of work in diet and disease in our mouse models, which is heavily concentrated in Maine. I'll give you a few examples that you would be very interested in. Gareth Howell has done a lengthy study on Alzheimer's and diet. And what he found was with mouse models of Alzheimer's, that in a high-fat Western diet and in the absence of exercise, it accelerates the Alzheimer's significantly. exercise does make a difference. And in fact, what it seems to do is induce neuroinflammation for reasons that are not terribly clear. Okay, but at least we have the first tools to actually crack that problem, to decipher the segmentation of the problem. The second is that in doing, and by the way, the UConn has a very, very good aging research program, with George Kutchell, which we work closely with. He doing the human and we doing the genomics and of the animal models. Using a unique set of experimental tools that we have, we find that diet has a significant role in accelerating aging. Did you know that in every study, and we've confirmed it in many ways, that caloric restriction extends life? Unfortunately, it's pretty miserable life, I think. Okay. However, using genetic diversity in a mouse model, we now have mice that are equivalent to 120 years old and going strong. Okay. Because we could do this in a lifespan of a mouse, which is 2.5 years, we now can examine the genomes of these mice that have survived so long. The environment's exactly the same, okay, but they lived a long time. So we're able to crack the genes that are involved in longevity, and we're extremely excited about it. We're one of the few National Institutes of Aging centers. There's 6 of them. We're also a National Cancer Institute Cancer Center as well. Yes, please.
Steve, go ahead. Steve?
Dr. Luke, your impact is greater than Connecticut and Maine, and I want to personally thank you because my daughter's doing a startup company in San Francisco that started at University of San Francisco Incubator Lab, then went to the accelerator program at Illumina, and now she's at a J Lab in South San Francisco. And you guys made a connection, and I want to thank you because you were able to provide tissue samples and lab mice for their research. So,
well, fantastic.
let the room know that your impact is wider than doing it.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Doctor, you expressed a personal interest in cancer research. Are you optimistic about the Vice President Biden's new focus on cancer? Is it really show, or are you optimistic to get the results of the focus in Washington?
I'm always optimistic when senior government officials are focused on resolving health problems. And let me just say that the war on cancer that Nixon started was really transformative. To give you an example, in the last 25 years, we have seen on national statistics, prior to that, nothing had changed. Last 25 years, every year is a 1% decline in cancer mortality. You may not know this, but this is really the product of multiple efforts. The wonderful research that's not only in the basic world that I reside in, but in your my clinical colleagues. The industry putting out much better drugs, prevention being distributed, the mammography, the colonoscopies, and so forth. Change in diet, the reduction in smoking is basically because of a government, exposure to the world. The Surgeon General said, this is a real problem. And it initiated all these things. And the answer is yes. I believe that it's going to be very important. Now, it's really interesting. If you extrapolate that decline, which is literally a linear decline in cancer mortality, it's really interesting that, we may be cancer-free in 2050. A little beyond my lifetime, but at least my kids will benefit from it, so maybe one last question?
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.